In the spring of 1453, the Turks were for the last time before the city, so often besieged by them and others, so often besieged in vain. Mohammed formed his lines, as Amurath had done, from the harbor to the sea, and they were strengthened with a similar embankment. 14 batteries were formed opposite those parts of the landward wall of the city that appeared to be the feeblest. The chief attack was directed against the gate of St. Romanus, near the center of the wall. Besides the Turkish cannon, ballistas were planted along the lines, which hurled large stones upon the battlements. The Turkish archers kept up a shower of arrows at any part of the walls where the defenders showed themselves, and a body of miners, whom the Sultan had brought from the mines of Novaberga in Serbia, carried on their subterranean works as far as the city. Wall, and forced large openings in the outer of the two walls. The aggregate of the Turkish troops is variously estimated at from 70,000 to 250,000. The smaller number must have been sufficient for all the military operations of the siege. Nor is it probable that Mohammed would have increased the difficulty of finding sufficient provisions for his army by useless crowding its ranks, besides the land forces. Sultan had collected a fleet of 320 vessels of various sizes, but all inferior of the large galleons of the Greeks and their allies. Von Hammer enumerates 29 sieges of the city since its foundation by the Megarians, 658 BC, under the name of Byzantium. It was besieged for 477 BC by Pausanias, generalissimo of the Greeks, after the campaign of Plataea in 410 BC by Alcibiades, in 347 BC by Leon, general of Philip of Macedon, in 197 Anno Domini by the Imperial Service, in 313 by the Caesar Maximus, in 315 by Constantine the Great, in 616 by Chosroes, king of Persia, in 626 by the Shagan of the Awars, in 654 by the Arabs under Muawiyah, in 667 by Yazid the Arab, in 672 by Sufyan ben Auf the Arab, in 715 by Muslima and Omar Abdul Aziz the Arabs, in 739 by Sulayman son of the Caliph Abdul Malik, in 764 by Paganos Khal of the Bulgarians, in 780 by Harun al-Rashid, in 798 by Abdul Malik Harun's general, in 811 by Ramus, despot of the Sclavi, in 820 by the Sclavian Thomas, in 866 by the Russians under Oswald and Dir, in 914 by Simeon Kral of the Bulgarians, in 1048 by the rebel Tournicus, in 1081 by Alexios Komnenos, in 1204 by the Crusaders, in 1261 by Michael Pelagius, in 1356 by Bayezid Yildirim for the first time, in 1402 by the same for the second time, in 1414 by Musa Bayezid's son, in 1422 by Amurath II, and in 1453 by Mohammed II. Since then it has been unbesieged for 4 centuries. Of the numerous commanders who have attacked the city site, only have captured it: Pausians, Alcibiades, Severus, Constantine, Alexius, Comnenus, Dandolo, Michael Pelagius, Mohammed. But the Christian ships were only 14 in number. They were moored in the Golden Horn of Great Harbour, the entrance of which was secured by a strong chain. The siege commenced on the 6th of April and was prolonged by the bravery and skill of the Constantine, Justiniani, and their Latin troops until the 29th of May. Many gallant deeds were performed during this time. The ability with which Justiniani taught the defenders to work their artillery and to use the important arm of war which they still exclusively possessed in the Greek fire excited the grateful eulogies of the Sultan himself. A general assault which the Turks hazarded before the walls were completely breached, and in which they employed the old machinery of movable towers, was repulsed, and the besiegers' engines were destroyed. A squadron of 4 Genoese ships and 1 Greek ship from Chios forced their way through the Turkish flotilla and brought seasonable supplies of corn and ammunition to the city. This action, which took place in the middle of April, was the most brilliant episode of the siege. Mohammed had ordered out of division of his galleys, 115 strong, to intercept the 5 ships of the Christians that were seen running swiftly and steadily through the Propontis before a full and favorable wind. The Greeks thronged the walls, and the Turks crowded down to the beach to watch the issue of this encounter. The Sultan himself rode down to the water's edge in full expectation of witnessing a triumph of his Marian force. and the destruction of capture of his enemies. On came the Christian ships, well armed, well manned, and well maneuvered. They crashed through the foremost of their brave but unpractised assailants. Their superior height made it impossible for their enemies to grapple or board them, and the very number and eagerness of the Turks increased the disorder in which their vessels soon were heaped confusedly together. Shouts of joy rose from the city walls while Mohammed, furious at the sight, spurred his horse into the very surf, as, as if with his own hand he would tear the victory from the Greeks. Still onward came the exulting Christian seamen. From their tall decks they hurled large stones and poured incessant volley of the inextinguishable Greek fire upon the Turkish barks beneath and around them. Onward they came to the harbor's mouth. The guard chain was lowered to receive them, and the welcome reinforcement rode securely in the Golden Horn, while the shattered remnant of the Turkish squadron crept back to the shore, where their sorrowing comrades of the land, force and the indignant Sultan Murad awaited them. Mohammed, in his wrath at the loss, and still more at the humiliation which he had sustained, ordered his defeated admiral Baltaogli to be impaled on the spot. The murmurs and the entreaties of the Janissaries made him recall the atrocious command, but he partly wreaked his wrath by inflicting personal chastisement on his brave but unsuccessful officer. Four slaves stretched the admiral prostrate on the ground, and Mohammed dealt him 100 blows with his heavy battle mace. This reverse of the first Turkish admiral is said to have given rise to a national opinion among the Ottomans that God had given them the empire of the earth, but had reversed that of the sea for the unbelievers. In such an opinion did really exist among the Turks before their late century of defeat and disaster. It must be largely modified by the exploits of the Barbarian Dragut, Piyale, Piri Sidi Ali, Kilich Ali, and their other revered commanders who have shed such splendor over the history of the Turkish navy. The victory which the five prevailing galleys obtained did more even than the martial succor which they conveyed to reanimate the defenders of Constantinople, but it was a solitary reinforcement. Constantine and Justinian never again saw the horizon with sails that bore hope and succor on their wings, and Mohammed was no exercise to be disheartened by a single defeat or to turn back from the enterprise because its difficulties suppressed expectation. Unable to gain the entrance of the harbor to determine it by a bold engineering maneuver to transport part of his fleet across the land, and launch it at the upper part of the Golden Horn, where in the narrow smooth water and with the aid ready from either shore, his galleys would have the mastery over the far less numerous though larger vessels of the Greeks. A smooth road of the planks was accordingly made along the 5 miles of land which intervene between the Bosporus and the Golden Horn, and a large division of the Turkish galleys was hauled along it and safely launched in the harbor, as it was necessary to overcome a considerable inclination of the ground. This engineering achievement reflects great credit on Sultan Muhammad. So the transport of war galleys over broad spaces of land was no novelty either in classical or medieval warfare, and a remarkable instance had lately occurred in Italy, where the Venetians in 1437 had moved a fleet overland from the Adige to the Lake of Garda. Thus master of the upper part of the port, Mohammed formed a pontoon bridge across it, the western end of which was so near to the angle of the landward and the harbour walls that cannon placed on the pontoon bridge could play upon the harbour side of the city. Justinian in vain attempted, with the Genoese and the Greek galleys, to destroy this bridge and burn the Turkish flotilla. The Venetians renewed the attempt with equal bad success. Also, although no serious effect was produced on the fortifications from the additional line of attack along which the Ottomans now established their cannonade, the labors of the scanty garrison were made more severe, and it became necessary to weaken the defense of the landward side, detaching men and guns to the wall along the harbor. Meanwhile, the exertions of the besiegers on the original and chief line of the siege were unremitting. The fire of their batteries, so slow and feeble in comparison with the artillery practice of modern time, was kept up for 7 weeks, and its effects were at last visible in the overthrow of 4 large towers and the yawning of a broad chasm in the city walls, near the gate of St. Romanus. The ditch was nearly filled up by the ruins of the defences, and the path into Constantinople was at last open. Mohammed now sent a last summons to surrender, to which Constantinople replied that if the Sultan would grant him peace he would accept it, with thanks to heaven that he would pay the Sultan tribute if demanded, but that he would not surrender the city which he had sworn to defend to the last moment of his life.